an architecture media podcast supported by the Australian Institute of Architects, produced on Boonwurrung country.
Welcome to Design Speaks Weekly, a podcast that explores the biggest stories in Australian architecture and design. I'm your host, Georgia Burks, and today I'm joined by Ross Harding, Principal of Finding Infinity, a creative and technical environmental consultancy firm dedicated to the global transition to self-sufficient cities. But first, here's the latest news headlines from Architecture AU.
In the news this week, the Northern Territory Government has scrapped plans for a national Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander art gallery in Alice Springs, nearly a decade after the project was first announced. Citing a lack of federal support, the Territory Government said they had no choice but to abandon the development. And in Queensland, expressions of interest are now open for the Gabba Entertainment Precinct in Brisbane. Spanning the site of the existing Gabba Stadium, the precinct will feature a new 17,000-seat indoor arena alongside a mixed-use residential community. Those are the headlines for this week. For the full stories and more news, visit architectureau.com. I'm Adair Winder. It's Tuesday, October 21.
Reducing our carbon emissions has been on the agenda for decades. As Principal of Finding Infinity, Ross Harding works tirelessly with his team to actually make this happen. Finding Infinity is best known as the mastermind behind the collaborative strategy A New Normal, a $100 billion initiative transforming Melbourne into a completely self-sufficient city with the help of architects. This movement now has a number of successful completed projects and has branched out to every capital city in Australia. In this interview, recorded live at South by Southwest Sydney 2025, Ross talks about how demonstrating the real and exciting opportunities of net zero is the key to unlocking regenerative cities.
Ross, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me, Georgia.
Pleasure. Ross, you've said that music sounds better when it is powered by the sun. I think it speaks to your philosophy of bringing technology and culture together in pursuit of self-sufficient cities. Can you share the moment that this approach solidified for you?
Definitely. Firstly, it's probably important to clarify that it wasn't actually me who came up with the term. Oh. I definitely say it a lot, but it was actually a drunk guy that came up to me at one of our parties.
Amazing.
And the power cut out at one of the first parties. And he was like, hey, what happened to the power? You have to plug in or something? I was like, yeah, it's our first experiment. We had to plug in, but what can you do? You got trial and error, you got to do these things. And he was like, oh man, music sounded so much better when it comes from the sun. and I guess that's what we were trying to do.
Yeah.
Is like, there's a lot of facts and figures and information being like, jammed down people's throats in all kinds of direction. And a lot of it's really great information, but I sort of like to reflect on the idea of empathy a bit, of going like, how do we make that information sort of digestible for people, whether they care or not, whether they understand or not. It's not this sort of, I like to be critical of environmental awareness in the sense that it's sort of like, there's been a lot of effort into that, but I don't know that we have enough time for the idea that, everyone cares. And there's something exciting about going, well, could we speed things up and accelerate things by making this transformation really like desirable and kind of like engaging, but also just people feeling that it's better in every way. And yeah, once again, whether people care or not, whether they understand or not, even better that they don't care or they don't understand. And sometimes it can be a little bit kind of elitist that you feel like people have to have a PhD in the topic of sustainability to be sort of engaging in this conversation.
Yeah. So basically the party with the drunk guy solidified the moment of making people feel that they need to know about this stuff.
Yeah, I guess we my background was very technical, financial, and I felt like I was writing reports for people, and they were just like spending money on a report, storing it in their top drawer, and feeling like they did something because they paid a person to write a report, but they didn't actually do anything with it.
Right.
And then in parallel, we were sort of like, when I look back at it, the parties was our own little developments. They were like, I was sort of like frustrated and annoyed about the fact that people were not necessarily taking our advice, even though often it just ticked all the boxes. It was, like profitable, made it better, was totally like, currently available technology. It's all like just better, win, win, win. But it just wasn't happening. And so I guess when I the reflection on so we started throwing these parties, and some reason they popped, and I it wasn't so much about kind of explaining how, the technical side of solar energy or explaining the information behind it, but you just rock up, throw a party, get some good tunes, good people, and sort of, design that experience to have no impact, but try and ensure that it is better. And so I think there's definitely been moments of us reflecting back on that in what we do in our work at Finding Infinity. And sort of, because I find I often get like annoyed by how people keep coming back to me about the parties. People are often like, hey, what happened to those solar powered parties? They were so cool. What happened to them? And I sort of realized that wasn't just about solar and music, but it was about technology and culture.
Yep.
And so I feel like these days how that's sort of impacted what we do is, I guess we like play a lot outside of our lines,
Yep.
Sort of everyone in the industry still feels like they're in their own boxes. It's like there's the architect box and the ESD consultant box and the structural engineer box, and then there's the services box and there's the client box, and it's sort of fun to actually blur those lines. And from our perspective, probably some of the most successful outcomes that we're getting from projects is when we get to culturally integrate a lot of these things into projects, or also bake a lot of our initiatives into the feasibility study. And so, we're constantly sort of playing outside of our lane.
I love that. And just on that kind of going beyond the lines or blurring the lines, that leads me to my next question, which in September this year, the Australian government updated its target to reduce emissions to 62 to 70% below 2005 levels by 2035. It was met with reactive responses from the public of either being too much or too little a target, and people are clearly invested, but as you mentioned earlier, exhausted by this important topic. Why is tapping into culture and design key to shifting or reviving our attitudes towards net zero cities?
Yeah, great question. And I mean, I guess just to start with, that target, for example, might seem ambitious, but I would say it's not ambitious enough. Like if you look at global consensus, it's sort of generally nations around the world are all trying to work towards hitting net zero by 2050. If you sort of then you cross to the science and you see anyone who knows about the science, and everyone's like, if we don't get there by 2030, we're, like, it's a good challenge for human survival, basically. And so
which is terrifying.
Yeah. And, like, I don't tend to like to get into the problems. It's sort of fun to skip into the solutions. But when you feel that urgency and you think about it, it's like, and then you kind of frame the context of Australia. And I definitely like to zoom in on cities these days rather than just probably primarily in Australia around governance. It's sort of, we've got federal, state, local councils. It's sort of, but to me, the city scale is interesting because it's, it's sort of, no one's really in charge of the city, but it's also where the problem and the solution is in terms of the infrastructure of the city. So I like that scale personally. And I guess, and if you frame Australian cities, it's like, Melbourne and Sydney are both in the top 20 wealthiest cities in the world. Brisbane and Perth are both in the top 50. And so it's sort of, like our capitals are some of the wealthiest cities in the world. if our cities are not trying to get there by, say, 2030, what hope do we have of every city in the world getting there by 2050? So we've sort of got this, like, you could frame it in a negative way, but it's an amazing opportunity for leadership. You know,
Yes.
like those who do, like, it's inevitable that we're going to have to transition. Those that do it first will reap the rewards. We will export that knowledge around the world. It's like it's only going to benefit us, you know, and also the faster we move, the less it will cost. You know, there's all these benefits that come from us just getting on with it. And I think I obviously spent a lot of time thinking about this stuff, and it's interesting when you go, oh yeah, we really need policy, and you know, we really need finance, and we really need technology, and you know, there's all these things we need. It's like, actually, we've got all the technology that we need currently available right now. It's not about needing new technology, it's about deploying technology. Yes, we need policy, but we live in a country where our government doesn't lead, actually. Like, our government, basically the private sector leads. And there's something also exciting about that, is that the transition, 99% of the funds for the transition will come from the private sector. So it's like, cool, why are we even trying to convince the government in some ways? Like, actually, let's just get on with it. And the transition's profitable. So there is finance available for it. Now, what's super exciting about architecture is that when you, I think that architecture is the vessel for the transformation. Because I think we've been in this phase of debating the why for a long time. And I think yawn, who cares, why, boring, we can debate that for hours. But I don't think, if you're having that conversation, it's the wrong conversation. The technical transition, you could sit 10 experts in a room and in half a day they'd roughly agree in any city in the world. It's not that complex. It doesn't need to be. And the how, though, is where we're at.
Right.
And to me, architecture is the how. Architecture can package up policy. Can package up a technical and financial solution. It can deliver it in a cultural way to gain the support of the general public. It can engage the private sector and show the private sector how exciting that is as a profitable example. And we as an industry have an ability to do the heavy lifting for the politicians to make them look good by introducing this policy that we're going to need anyway.
That's kind of what you've done with this movement, A New Normal, that you've created, which is a strategy to transform Australian cities to be self-sufficient. You're sort of pulling together architects to come up with these amazing examples that eventually get built and demonstrate what can be done. What value did you see in working with architects to propel this movement?
It's a good question. And I mean, obviously, you know, for context, we'd been advising architects for a long time and love architecture. Both my brothers are architects. We're sort of, very passionate about the topic. But I'd probably spent a long time advising architects after the project had been designed in some ways. Which is too late, would you say? I think it often can be. It can often be too late. Is that, sometimes a lot of the time what we're doing in architecture and the construction industry in general is that we're working together as a group of people to design a project, and everyone's getting more and more excited about it, and it's sort of the budget's getting bigger and bigger, and then we get the price back from the quantity surveyor and the builder, and it's too much, and then we need to slice it somehow. And usually we remove the environmental budget and the landscape budget. It's sort of like the way that the industry typically works. Now, there's something interesting about going, well, we need policy, and without policy, without example projects, we won't have the policy, because you can't just introduce policy and everyone's like, well, it's never been done before. So we need to de-risk the policy to be able to sort of front load that initiative. So the idea that we're not sort of having the environmental outcome of a project as an optional extra, but at the core of it, at the culture of the project, at the center of it, means that you can't value manage that out at the end. So that's sort of how our journey with this industry has gone, is going, what if we didn't start with a project and trying to like change it once it's already designed. But what happens if we started with the things that we need to do to transform the city? And we looked at it and was like, well, we need more solar in the city, or we need to remove gas from existing buildings, or we need water treatment plants, or we need waste to energy plants, or we need to electrify all the existing cars, or these are all the things that are going to have to happen. We spent 2 years writing a strategy and all the numbers, and then we sort of were like, well, it's just another report that everyone's going to ignore. But then we thought about the parties, we thought about our friends, the architects, and we're like, let's basically translate this $100 billion strategy into 15 projects that we can deliver across the city. And of all the weird, crazy stunts we've tried over the years, somehow it helped. And I guess, we've now got a number of projects built as a result of that, which has been really helpful. We're now set up in, setting up in Perth, Adelaide, Brisbane, Sydney and Melbourne. And so we're sort of on a bit of a mission to pull sort of architects from around the country to proactively get on with it, and sort of by almost through the process of speculative architecture.
Yeah, making net zero cool, basically.
I guess so. Yeah, I probably, it's definitely not on our mind to make it cool.
Yeah.
I guess we want to make it happen.
Yeah,
and we want. I'm somehow like. Maybe cultural is slightly more the term, is that we looked into over the years, and the one definition of culture is the sum total of ways of living passed down from one generation to the next, which interests me because culture is not about, sort of the NGV or the Art Gallery of New South Wales or this like kind of, like high culture that is sort of aspirational, but it's also a barbecue on the suburbs, or like a ute on the construction site, and it's sort of it's the culture is defined by the people. And so to me, that idea of not sort of being kind of a bit of a wanker about it and going, I know what needs to happen, you guys all need to change, here's how it is, but more going like, hey, we've all got to go on this journey together. How can we make it work for everyone and make it feel better, look better, like, taste better, be better in every way?
Yeah.
And so let's try and empathize with people. And we know each other a bit. I'm not the most empathetic person. I've had to learn that.
You're pretty nice though, Ross. Look, you mentioned making everything better for all of us. We know, and you touched on this earlier, we know that electrifying our buildings is one of the first things we can do and need to do in this transition. But beyond that, what would be the next step for all of us? Yes.
Well, I think as a starting point, it's interesting that it's sort of our industry is often so focused on new construction. It feels like that's where we all spend our time trying to sort of put submissions in, try and win competitions. We're all like, it feels like most of the money and the time and the energy of the entire construction industry is going towards building some new stuff. And when you look at the transformation in the city that we've got ahead, it's sort of majority of the work, majority of the budget, majority of the energy and the time is going to be in transforming our existing infrastructure of our cities. And somehow there's not, it's not that easy to go and just find someone and be like, hey, we see your like 10-story office building and we want to transform that. So the way we broke it down is it started as 10 initiatives, it's now 12 initiatives, but in effect, who cares about the numbers? It's the majority of the initiatives in a new normal are about transforming our existing infrastructure. So electrifying the entire transport sector. Obviously, we need better public transport. Electrifying all existing buildings. So getting off gas. We need to get off oil. We need to get off gas. And then, in effect, energy efficiency of existing buildings. We need more renewable energy in our cities. We need water treatment. We need water efficiency. We need to deal with our circular economy. Food waste is probably half of the waste in cities.
Yes.
But then all the other materials are huge. There's a huge value proposition for the circular economy. I could go on. I think you get the idea.
Yeah.
But then lastly, if we're going to build new stuff, it needs to help. It can't add to we can't just keep adding to the problem. So there is this exciting, and our role in projects is we do all these numbers. And so we find that it's actually really like, we sort of find the Godfather situation on every project, make them an offer they can't refuse. The dream for us on every project is on budget, zero impact or positive impact, and zero running costs. And we're finding more and more projects are able to achieve those things.
That's really exciting.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, architecture that gives more than it takes, I think, should definitely be the way of the future. Ross, look, to finish our episode, I want to ask you the question we ask all of our guests on the Design Speaks Weekly podcast. At this moment in time, what is inspiring you?
Good question. I'm spending a lot of time in a little bush property in between Bacchus Marsh and Melton. It's called Long Forest, and recently bought this amazing Robin Boyd house. And so it's like 2 Robin Boyd houses and a Roy Grounds library all on one site, which is just wild. I'm kind of pinching myself every day that I get to be there. But being out there, being in nature and sort of dreaming about restoring this place totally fires me up every day. Like, I just love waking up out there and just trying to work it out. And in some ways, it feels like a little mini city out there to me to dream about and to try and implement some of these sort of prototypes that we need to do at the city scale.
Love that answer, Ross. Look, it is always a really good time speaking with you. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Georgia.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode, which is supported by the Australian Institute of Architects. If you're enjoying this podcast, be sure to subscribe, share, or leave a rating. I'm Georgia Burks, and this has been Design Speaks Weekly. Design Speaks Weekly is produced on Boonwurrung country. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture.